Hello, and welcome to this latest LinkedIn Live from Kaga. We're delighted today to welcome Viktoriya Vasilenko, co-founder and CEO of the Knowledge Gate Group. Her group, which connects life science firms with industry experts, won the Vesalius Innovation Award last year. Viktoriya holds a master's in service management from Copenhagen Business School and a degree in international business and marketing from Pepperdine University. And we're delighted to have you here today. Viktoriya, hello.
Hi, Will. Thanks for having me.
Yes, and I will say, first of all, apologies to everyone who was hoping to join us last week, but we have both been ill. There may be some coughing and sneezing today, but fingers crossed we can get through an informative and educational chat with only a slight amount of flu in the background. Apologies again. Well, for everyone listening at home and watching, could you tell us a little bit about maybe some background to you and the Knowledge Gate Group? You're last year's winners at the Vesalius Awards, and we had this year's just this week. So let's lay some of that groundwork of what the Knowledge Gate Group is and how it came together.
Sure. So Knowledge Gate Group started about 2 weeks after I graduated with my master's from CBS. I met my co-founder at university, and just around when the short version and the funny version of it is that I almost died and he got brutally dumped. And so we trauma bonded and started a company together. The slightly longer version of that is that I, in my last few months of university, I got very sick out of nowhere. It was incredibly, incredibly scary. And however, I was extremely lucky that coincidentally one of Europe's leading gastroenterologists happened to be in Copenhagen, a few minutes away from me. I was sent to him. He found the issue, and then the extra luck on top of that is that I got access to novel treatment. It cured me completely, saved my life. I'm perfectly healthy now, so that was extremely lucky. While I was going through that, which completely changed my worldview in every which way possible, while I was going through that, my co-founder, he got brutally dumped by his partner of 7 years. And so we had many, many long chats together about life and everything that entails. Then we were watching, I got very obsessed with my treatment and how it came to be, and everything around it, really. We were watching a speech that the researcher that made my treatment, was responsible for my treatment, made. He explained that it took 27 years to go from early stage R&D to the treatment being available on the market. I didn't have a life science background, so I thought that was absolutely crazy. And then I learned through the process that that's actually a quite normal time frame. And he went on to express that he found out decades really later that there were 7 or 8 groups of researchers around the world who were focusing on the same problem he was at the same time. So Barney, my co-founder, and I, we figured that seems like quite a solvable problem. We were still students, and so when we cold called everyone, essentially, they were very willing to talk to us. And so that's kind of how Knowledge Gate Group came to be. The goal was really to accelerate the research process.
Well, a little bit of serendipity and quite a lot of good luck to
get
through that process alive and hopefully on better romantic footing for your co-founder.
Yes, on much better. He's in a very, very happy relationship now as well. All good here.
Well, you mentioned being something of an outsider to life science and health sciences. Was there anything about that background that you felt maybe was a challenge for other people who are going to get on board with coming up with a health tech business, or was it a breath of fresh air?
Both simultaneously, actually. So I remember, especially in the early days pitching to our first investors, some of the biggest pushback that we got was, but both of you are business students, and he has more of a tech background, but nevertheless, you're both young business students. What do you know about this? This isn't your background. While simultaneously, others were also thinking that it's a positive thing that we come in with a fresh scope. Ultimately, I believe that the latter were a bit more right. But there was definitely a big part of the discussion. But again, we weren't, the explanation was we weren't solving the issue ourselves. We weren't providing the knowledge ourselves. We were simply creating a technology that removed so many of the silos that currently exist.
And has the journey of developing Knowledge Gate Group been pursuing that one idea all the way through, or has there been kind of a little bit of shape changing happening as it's kind of found its fit in the world?
There's been a bit of shape changing, but I think a better way to express the changing is more we learned that we had to take the development in phases. We couldn't do absolutely everything at the same time. So we started with what was kind of the biggest problem and the most solvable problem, which is industry to researchers themselves, bridging that gap. Further on in the process, actually quite now that we're developing and going to be releasing, is also creating that same system for the researcher to the researcher side. And then there's other industry players we'd like to introduce into the ecosystem ourselves. But really, we have to take quite a pragmatic approach to the solution, and one solution really feeds into the other versus trying to create everything at the exact same time.
Well, with that launch coming up, could you tell us a little bit about where that development process has taken you? I imagine it's all been kind of the jet set life, or is it a bit more kind of remote teams pitches to investors these days?
Both. We started, so we're a COVID-born company. So we started off, everything has been completely remote. And the majority of what we do is also still remote, but probably 2 or 3 times a year requires a bit more of a human touch within there. But for the most part, COVID-born, I think a lot of COVID-born companies say the same thing, that nearly everything remains remote at these days.
With the, I suppose, the optimism or naivety of being an outsider coming into all of these meetings with people who, on that plus side, see you as a breath of fresh air, was there any hurdle that you found along the way that you really weren't ready for?
There's been so many of them. And the way to come across that is that we've really brought on the most excellent advisors to help us through the process as well. One significant hurdle that we came to be is obviously within life science, it's quite a conservative industry, and there's a reason for that. It should definitely remain conservative in some aspects of it. But there's a lot of legalsies, really, that we had to make sure we're very much set up correctly and set up in the right timeline as well. And that's a hurdle that I had absolutely no idea about, and certainly same for my co-founder as well. However, thankfully, one of our investors happens to be very much an expert within that and helped us craft it and move forward with it. But at least a dozen times a year, I think we come across a hurdle that we have to take outside knowledge for.
Well, I suppose to come back to the origin story of your own personal experience, is that the case study, the use case that you lead with? Or have you got any other illustrations of how this has been a solution connecting patients, advisors, and medical professionals in ways that they hadn't been connected before?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe before I start with that, I'll take a step back and explain a bit more about how the solution works. I think I skipped that part in your first question. So essentially what Knowledge Gate Group has developed is multi-phased. Step 1 is we've developed a solution that goes through hundreds of millions of data points. The most important by far of these data points is academic articles. However, there's also clinical trial information, government reports, and company reports, and a bit of social media within there. From these data points, we can then automatically identify experts within topics. Once an expert has been identified, we automatically reach out to them and we invite them to be a part of our platform. It's invitation only to maintain a high quality standard. They onboarded, T's and C's, pharmacovigilance training, all that fun due diligence that we have to do. At that point, they're onboarded in our platform. Our clients are pharmaceutical companies, biotech companies, and research organizations. They then get access to the platform, able to collaborate with these experts in a much faster way. So the average pharma company today, it takes about 3 to 6 months before they're able to collaborate with an external expert. But through Knowledge Gate Group, we really take that down to a period of days. I think one of the best best samples really that I can share that explains how we do it, is we were working with a Swiss research organization who was looking to how to maintain or how to potentially solve. So they were working on CAR T-cell therapy for the treatment of multiple myeloma. And specifically within this case, they were looking on how to manage side effects, which is cytokine release syndrome and neurotoxicity. Through Knowledge Gate Group's platform, they were able to connect with a researcher in California who's spearheading a first-in-human clinical trial focusing on exactly this, really creating a toggle on and off switch. There's also, they connected with a businesswoman in China who's the CEO of a very promising company doing this, as well as a researcher in Scandinavia. So a Swiss organization, American researcher, Chinese CEO, and Scandinavian researcher were able to collaborate and find a solution that otherwise I think would have taken a significantly longer period of time, as well as untold monies, and ultimately patients therefore are impacted through that timeline as well.
That sounds like the kind of thing that, if someone was to ask for a use case of machine learning or AI, new technology of making things possible, making these connections faster, it sounds like a really great example of that. Could Knowledge Gate have existed 10, 15 years ago?
That's a great question. We could have, but nowhere near the level of efficiency that we do now. I think 10, 15 years ago, we could have been looking at essentially like a LinkedIn Rolodex, or the early years of something like ResearchGate, right? So it's a university Rolodex. So it was possible, but certainly not at the level or the level of efficiency that's possible now.
Which then, I suppose, all leads up to what brings us together and brings you into the Karga system is the Vesalius Award, the innovation award that's granted to companies that are pushing boundaries in medical education, engagement, and innovation. Could you start off with maybe a little bit of the application process for you, how you became aware of it and how you went through the process?
Sure. So we were recommended to apply to the Vesalius Awards with an advisor of ours. The application first step, now this is over a year ago, so I'll try to remember back. I think we started off with an online form, answering some questions, sharing a deck about Knowledge Gate Group. Step 2, if I remember correctly, was a pitch where we were asked to come in. There was a panel, pitch the company, answered their questions. At that point, we were notified that we were selected as finalists. Karga very kindly flew us to London for the awards ceremony. To be honest, we weren't expecting to win. There were some very impressive other companies that were part of the process as well. And so we came to London and they started naming off the winners, and then the last one was us, and it was Knowledge Gate Group, and we were genuinely extremely taken aback and very honored to do so. But it was a fantastic process throughout.
It comes with prize money as a kind of a boost to get you along the way. Was there anything that came with that award-winning recognition or prestige? What kind of doors did it open?
Quite a few. So I think something that I forgot to mention just now is through the process as well, Karga matched us up with a mentor who is a genuinely fantastic man and was so helpful through the entire process. So the doors that he opened in terms of advice, we're still in contact to this day, and it's been over a year later. He's been really, really fantastic. On the other side as well, at the actual award ceremony, we were approached and met a few extremely relevant industry players that also kind of helped push the needle pretty significantly in terms of development. And that's definitely not doors that we could have opened on ourselves. It's just through the Vesalius Awards that became possible.
And the 2025 Vesalius Awards happened just this past week in London. The winners were the Profectus Academy. Was there anything that I suppose we could use this time to say either congratulations to the new winners, or what would you say has been a successful year for you post award winning, and what kind of encouragement or lessons would you give to this year's winners?
Yeah, so absolutely. First of all, congratulations. That's there's a lot of really impressive companies that apply, so it's something most certainly to be proud of. Through the year after, I think it's very important to really take advantage regarding the doors that are open through the process. Double down, triple down on those. Again, because of the doors that were open, it really moved the needle very, very significantly for Knowledge Gate Group. I think it would have been a much steeper climb without really the helping hand that the network brought us.
Now, the chat is open to questions for anyone watching this, if you would like to send something in as a question to Viktoriya directly. But to think more broadly, whilst those questions might be coming through the chat system, is there anything that aspiring entrepreneurs watching this, maybe if there's any encouragement or any lessons that you would say, you know, you've been through this process, anyone watching this doesn't have to have a life-threatening condition or be hospitalized. Your partner,
Hopefully not.
a co-founder, doesn't have to have a, and I quote, brutal breakup. But going back to that start, going back to those long conversations you were having, is there anything that you would like to say to someone who could be in that similar position, that's that phase of their development and career, that you would say, forget about the pitch decks, forget about the long flights, the long nights. Here is what I have kept personally from all of that.
Yeah. Entrepreneurship is the best move I've ever made in my life. And I think I haven't spoken to another entrepreneur, whether it worked out great or it didn't, that hasn't said the same thing, just because of the personal learnings that you take through the process is, I think, genuinely unmatched. I think the most important thing by far is whatever project or idea it is that launch, you need to hold it very, very close to yourself, and it has to be something that motivates you on a much deeper level than anything surface level, because there's some horrific and very difficult days that you go through. And if it's not something that you're really truly motivated by, you won't keep pushing. I had the honor of speaking with enormously successful and very impressive individual and about 2 years ago, and they told me something that I really kept close to heart, and the more time goes by, the more time I see it. And they told me that the difference between a successful company and not, in their perspective, is the majority of the time simply time and energy. At some point you come across a problem that just feels a bit too big to solve or a bit too difficult to solve, and that's really when you need the extra energy to push through it. Oftentimes that's really the difference between the two things. So it needs to be something that you're enormously passionate about.
How is that passion keeping going for you? Do you have great hopes for the rest of 2026, or maybe we push that back to even 2030? Where do you want to see Knowledge Gate Group by this time, 2030?
I have a huge amount of passion for it. This really feels like my life's work. I've given essentially all of my 20s to it at this point, and I hope to do so for a few decades to come. And I see Knowledge Gate Group as fundamentally changing the research process at some point. So from day one, we solve a pretty significant problem, and every step of the level, we solve another problem that feeds into the ecosystem. I really see Knowledge Gate Group as setting up the rails for what decentralized science will be. However, that really is a step-by-step approach to do that. So really no big deal, but I really see the company fundamentally changing the scientific research process.
If you had small goals or even less energy, then I suppose you wouldn't have made it this far and you wouldn't have won the awards that you have won. So aiming big is working well for you. I'm not going to get in the way of that. Well, that brings us up to about 20 minutes into this conversation, and we're keeping the chat open for anyone watching from the comments. But for the remainder of our session today, we could think about how maybe new tech is changing health innovation, and maybe how outsider perspectives are changing health innovation. Because, like you say, you're out here to shake things up and revolutionize health care and health development. Do you think there is room for many more outsiders in health, or is it going to be iterative from within?
Both. I really hope it'll be iterative from within, because there's some, the organization you represent yourself, some really impressive companies with a lot of strong roots that have done a lot of good work through the years. However, there's also essentially unlimited opportunity for new organizations to come into play. So many of the processes that we look at are so incredibly inefficient, and really it's all of us today as a whole that face the consequences of that. So I think on both sides, there's an unlimited amount of potential.
Pardon me.
For you, you're fine.
When I think about inefficiency and wasted energy, that's how I spent the last week of just sat on the sofa having a bad time. But that's for another time. So for today, I think that brings us to the end of our questions and towards the end of our session. For everyone watching at home, I say thank you for joining us, and be sure to look up some of last year's competitors in the Vesalius Awards, which of course you have won, and everyone that went into making this year's Vesalius Awards a success as well. You can join us next year. Our next session will be in January, but for now, this has been a wonderful 2025 with all of you, and Viktoriya, thank you so much for a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you so much, Will.
Thanks again for watching at home. We'll see you again soon. Goodbye.